minutes left. Just so you know, Chester, you're looking very blue, if that's the right term.
Okay.
Or at least your white light, so to speak, or whatever.
I know what you mean.
So we are.
But you only look like you have one light on.
No, I got both of them on.
Okay. Your left seems to be your dominant.
Funny you should mention that. I've been flagging left all weekend.
So are your lights. Because I haven't noticed it before, but you've got a shadow from that side for some reason. I don't know why I'm like so amused by that. Anyways.
It's because one's pointing up, the other one's pointing kind of at me.
Oh. Do you like it pointing at you or pointing up, or?
I prefer them very straight. Sometimes with a little curved down, it's beneficial. But if they're too far curved up, it's not as fun unless you're in a 69 position.
Well, we were talking about lights, I thought.
Oh. My mind is still on sex. Because I didn't get any.
Damn it.
I know, shocking.
Hey, okay, so before we get into things, for those that happen to listen to the pre-show at all, not that I think there's anybody yet, but Ed, this is something I've wondered about for a long time, but I don't know if this will ever come about correctly. Well, let me back up a second and ask you a question or two. Do you know who Freddie Freeman is? Freddie and Jake Freeman? Okay. They've been doing a series of workshops over the past probably 3 years called Bare Your Soul.
Okay.
And one of the series, there's kind of two different tracks I think they're working on. One of them is a body acceptance workshop where all participants and the facilitators are completely 100% naked. So it's a closed door session. Oh, yeah. But it's not sex in any way. Like, there's nothing sexual about it.
Okay.
It's about breaking down and working in, like, groups, but also as the larger group within it, about discovering what your body issues are, talking openly about your body issues. One of the biggest things I hear consistently is people say they come out of it and they're like, wow, I didn't realize that everybody basically has issues about their own body. And that another guy that I think is beautiful or sexy or perfect doesn't see themselves that way. And so, like, the one thing that I like about what they've been doing with that. So now to lead into what I wanted to ask you is, do you think in what you know of in terms of, like, bear culture or bear events, bear runs, that there's a space in which sex workshops can exist without it becoming a thing? And by a thing, I mean, like, people blowing it out of proportion and making it more than it needs to be. Like, in a serious, like, kind of educational aspect. Not clinical, you know, like, not desensitized, but...
So, like, more like educational stuff? So, like, that's really interesting because, so I just, my last sex therapy class, we talked about body issues like body mapping or desire mapping. And I brought up the idea that, like, in bear culture, when somebody loses weight, do they lose their desirability? And so, like, you know, there seems to be, like, this, I don't know, like, recently, like, you know, people who are undergoing, like, surgery. And I wonder if they have any issues with their acceptance level within the community now that they are of a different size.
I don't know from firsthand experience, but plenty of my friends have come forward and said that two things happen with them. One is they have more self-confidence, which is great, but at the same time, they do not feel that they are as attractive as they used to be.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. So I think there is a space within the bear community, especially at bear runs, for that, for, like, body positivity of all sizes. And but I think that it would be, like, I think it would be very difficult to not turn into something sexual.
Well, so what I'm wondering, though, is, like, what Jay and Freddie are already working on, I think, has a space and a place, and they've, so far, from my opinion, been successful with it. What I'm curious about, though, is because I'm an educator and an instructor, design, developer, facilitator, all that mumbo jumbo. I teach people like in all sorts of aspects of my life. There's a part of me that's like we've kind of talked about. We did it a little bit on this show. Gabe and I co-facilitated a Drenched Fur. I don't know if you knew a couple years ago about kissing. Like it's funny because Gabe, quote unquote, like as a kind of a funny title, is a world-class kisser. But one of his criticism is like there's a lot of people out there who don't know how to kiss or kiss good or well. And Chester and I have kind of made a joke about there are people out there who don't know really how to give head, like perform fellatio very well. And so, like, the kissing workshop came out of that. Gabe was like, because I said to him, I was like, hey, you want to do a workshop on this? Like, I think it's something we can get away with. Like, kissing is not innocuous, but, it's very low level. But what I'm wondering about is, like, do you think there's a space and a way to bring that to people? Like, because I think there's too much tribal learning going on that they either, like, through interactions in a bar, a hookup app, or whatever, they kind of figure things out or get their education in not necessarily the best outlets like porn. Or, and I'm going to own this, they go to an event, like an event that I put on, and they get educated there, but that doesn't mean that they're getting a good education.
No, you're exactly right. You're totally right. So, I mean, to answer your question, there's always a space for everything. That would be my answer.
Okay, so next question, Miss America.
Would you like to teach a blowjob class? No, that's not what he's going to ask. Or is it? Can I teach it?
I think, no, I think you're right that there's always a space for that. I just think that there's a lot of minefields when it comes to this kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Like, one of the things that we've internally talked about as a committee is like, I would like us to do more focus on health, but health is a very touchy subject in the community. So, like, if we did a workshop on like CPAPs and BiPAPs, we could probably get away with that because that's an experience that people have and they would probably find it interesting. And, I'd have to line up vendors and blah, blah, blah. But it would be something. But to have a workshop where we talk about heart disease, diabetes, the effects of obesity, that kind of stuff. We would
need professionals for that.
Well, not only would you need professionals, but I don't know if the audience wants it.
Right.
Like, while they might know that they need it, I think there's a part where it's like, don't yuck my yum. Like, I'm here, I'm having fun, I'm at a run. Don't be coming at me with like, the school marm lecture mode, like that you need to teach me how to be better about my diet or my physical activity or whatever.
That is fair. That is fair as fuck. Like, really. But there is a space. And like, there is a place where you have to like cut through the bullshit and be like, this is reality. There is a need for that, and there are people who would be willing to listen to that if they gave it a chance and a shot, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Regarding that, Gary, I completely understand what you're saying. And take, for instance, I'm going to type it to you because we are on air and I don't want.
That's fair. And we do need to get to the actual show.
I have a feeling you know who I'm going to mention.
Okay.
But how do you intervene with that? How do you go up to somebody and say, look, I think you have a problem?
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's not quite the angle that I was going with, but to me it's more like, hey, this is a thing that's happening in our community. And while we love each other and we are a community, we are a chosen family, we also need to own that, like, we should take care of ourselves. So it's not that I'm a person that advocates and thinks that, like, we should, deliver a message of everyone needs to be healthy and that everybody needs to, get more roughage in their diet and blah, blah, blah. It's more like, no, like, just be aware that these are the things that come from that. And like, one of the things I get concerned about, and I'll own that this is privately me, is people who are like, they want to be bigger. And I'm kind of like, well, that's all fine and dandy, but like, you do realize that there's consequences for that.
Weighed the outcomes of that? Yeah, I have a friend that's constantly talking about wanting to be bigger, and he's proud that he's put on X amount of weight, and like it's his whole life right now. And I'm like, you're 21, it's fine now, but what happens in 20 years?
Right.
Well, I mean, and I think there's also a space for discussion about being healthy and being big, right? Like that. You can be both, like you can eat healthy and
Right.
have weight on you. And that doesn't mean, so like, I get a lot of pushback from my family who says that, you're going to have a heart attack and you're going to die. And I'm like, well, you don't know that, you're not my doctor. Just because I am of a certain size does not mean that I am at risk. So I think you're onto something. And I think that, we can, you guys can definitely create a space for that. That would be well received.
Okay. Yeah, just asked, like, one of the things I'm running into, I think, is a little bit of a schism with me internally. Having gone to Claw, I really like how the leather community has an education focus, that it has this notion of, like, there's, like, legacy knowledge to be carried forward, as well as advancing with the change of culture and technology and stuff. And the bear community isn't really focused in that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I also see, like, that there's kind of a crossroads opportunity, at least I think there is, but I don't know if other people are square with that, or if they want it or are interested. So, and I don't want to make my event that thing. So that's why we're not completely switching to a model of that sort, if you know what I mean. Like, we do workshops a little bit here and there, but that's it.
Yeah.
Ed, I before we actually get going with the recording, I wanted to point out that during the recording, particularly when we are doing feedback, and you want to jump in with a point of view, you are welcome to. Like, you don't have to stay silent. I noticed that when we have guests on, they're always quiet up until the point where we announce that they're on the show. And I just want to give you a heads up that you don't have to do that. So if you want to jump in for like a commentary on something that we're talking about, go ahead with it. Okay,
and then can I make a request? So I know that, Gary, you call me Ed. For the purpose of this podcast, can you guys call me Edward? Because that's how I'm professionally kind of known.
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Okay, cool. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But I'm fine with you guys calling me Ed outside, if that makes sense.
Baby, I'll call you whatever you want. You just have to tell me what to yell.
Oh!
Anyway, you somehow lost your camera, by the way.
Yeah, your camera is offline, Mr. Angelini-Cooke, yes.
Hold on. There we go.
Oh,
Yay!
Yay!
There was a guy on Growler this weekend. I opened up my Growler and I saw his name as Master Sir Bear Daddy, and I'm like, honey, that is just a little too much. Like, pick one.
Well, it's a lot of titles. It's kind of like you don't necessarily need all of them. You can just one or two, maybe.
You're at a leather weekend. Sir or Daddy works just fine.
Nice.
In regards to feedback, I'm not going to do all of it this time because I just noticed the YouTube comment.
Are you saying that you want to skip that?
No. I'm not saying we should
thing.
skip it. It's a time thing. So maybe I'm gonna skip Tumblr for next week.
Do we want to just skip comments and only talk about likes and subscribes?
Yeah, but I think it's important that we say, hey, we have some comments that were left on YouTube. We're not going to deal with them this week.
Okay. Well, because we've also got comments on Facebook and comments on Tumblr. So that's why I'm like, if we just kind of group it and keep it to likes and subscribes or whatever, and then we can address all the comments next Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just fine. I'm just saying, when we get down to, and we received a YouTube comment, we'll talk about it next week. We received a Tumblr comment, we'll talk about it next week.
Works for me.
So,
or we could just do a feedback show next week.
That's a possibility.
Things.
Ooh, I know what I'm doing. Okay, that's the pick.
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
Me too.
Edward looks ready to go.
I'm editing.
Oh, jeez. Start the show, I'll get it.
Finish up the one I was on.
All right, let's do this.
All right, let's do this, son of a bitch. It's November 19th, 2017. I'm Jeff.
Who's your bear? That's right. I am your bear.
I am Chester.
This room is a pigsty, and you're a dirty pig boy.
And that makes me Gary.
Don't hurt nobody with your bad self.
And welcome to Cubs Out Loud, the Bear Podcast of Interminable Length, episode number 441. And we have a guest with us, a graduate student at Widener University in Chester, PA. We got Edward Angelini-Cooke. Welcome,
Hey,
Edward.
everybody. Thanks.
And we've got a topic I understand you're familiar with. So, but first, we're going to do this. So, Monday, I get a message from my raid leader trying to be nice and everything. But basically he said, "You're fired!" Apparently the improvement I've been doing for my raid team wasn't good enough for them. Which wasn't made clear. There's lots of things which were just... I understand where he was coming from. He's still a nice guy. I'm not going to talk shit about him. But I think there's a few things that could have been improved between both of us. So, I have no raid team. Work has been crazy.
At all?
Yeah, I'm not on a raid team.
No raid team at all? Oh,
In
I'm
fact,
sorry.
this besides work being crazy with just some weird shit happening, things aren't moving to the right place, and I think I got overtime practically every single day this week, which is a good thing.
With 3 checks coming up in December, yeah, that's a good thing.
Well, no, it should still be 4.
4. Do you get paid weekly or every other week?
I get paid weekly.
Oh.
Okay.
The rest of us in a different
Then
corporate.
you might get 5.
5?
Yeah,
then?
we get. Yeah, we get paid. We get paid every other week.
I'm a contractor. I get paid weekly.
Oh.
And in that case, I logged in once to WoW this week to send some Vantis runes to somebody who sent me some materials to make them. And I haven't logged into WoW all week besides that one time.
Do you think that having ended with the raid team, do you think that's going to make you change your pattern of playing the game overall?
Well, considering I haven't logged in all week and instead have been playing Stardew Valley, like I started a new farm with the new thing, and I'm I think I'm on the last day of summer, my second year in that one, and got a whole shitload of stuff to take care that I've taken care of. I've got like over 100,000 gold, and it's like each day I'm like, I'm not sure what I need to do. Like everything's all like taken care of. I've gotten a new addiction, but I'm sure I'm going to be back. But instead of like actively looking to find a new raid team or anything, work on some other things like my transmog collection, which I was really into, the artifact power farming, and I found out that some things that really could have improved is if I had the right legendary, if that would RNG drop for me, but I would probably have to farm that, and that's just boring. I just don't want to do it. I don't wanna. Unlike previous expansions where you didn't have to do all that shit, but still be effective in raid. So now it's more of like I'm casual, at least for the rest of this, but my goal is that next expansion for Battle for Azeroth, that I'm going to go back to my original character, Druid, and hopefully get back onto the same raid team, because I love the raid team. So, but that's me. Stardew Valley addiction, fired from my raid team, work is crazy. And of course, Black Friday is coming up, so it's probably going to get a little crazier till the end of the year. But at least with my current position at Apple, at least I don't have that like totally off time for the last 2 weeks of the year, because I'm now working with regular consumers instead of education customers as well. That I'll actually be working those weeks. So, yay!
Very cool.
Yep. Tester.
This week I took Evan to a family physician, Equitas Health here in Columbus. It's a LGBTQ clinic, I guess you could say. They're a hospital organization. They focus on LGBTQ patients.
Ooh, okay.
And if you guys remember on my Facebook the other week, I put a post out something like, it's the first time I've ever gone through a medical description and it asks me for my pronouns and my relationship status. Mm-hmm. And it even breaks it down like I'm in a poly relationship or monogamous or semi-poly, something of that effect. I had gone to the same clinic. Well, anyway, he got started on prep last week, so good for him.
Yay!
Let's see what else. I had an interview at my friend Joe's workplace, working for the Franklin County Job and Family Services, and I'm feeling confident. I'm very qualified for the position. I had the interview on Thursday. I think it went really well. Hopefully I find out later this week. I did not get the job at the other place, though, because they said that, well, we're going to call you later in the day if you get the job, and they never called, so.
Did you follow up?
No.
Okay.
Because he was very clear about, I'm not even going to bother to call you if we can't hire you.
That's fine. I'm old school. I don't give a shit what anybody says the current trends are. I feel like you should always do a follow-up. Even if you're not being given the opportunity, that you let them know where you stand.
Okay.
So in this case, you could say, I haven't heard from you. My presumption is you've gone with another candidate. That's perfectly fine. I want you to know I am still interested, or I'm no longer interested in any options or opportunities with your entity. Just so that they kind of know. And if you are still interested, if they're good at what they do, they should let you know whether or not they kept your resume or anything on file. Because if they don't tell you, then that's kind of poopy on them.
I think
like,
and
if
keeping
they got
the
rid of
resume
it,
and file thing is bullshit anyways. They may keep the resume, but they never really do to check back with it, as far as I can tell.
Well,
he did
how good of a candidate you are. That's,
I think it comes down to the fact that I went in there and said, and I was right up front with the guy, and I said, look, this is the type of job that I'm looking for, and I'm going to continue to search for that job. And I'm giving you a heads up now because I don't want to be an employee that I'm working here for 3 weeks and then come back into your office and say, hey, thanks for the job, but I quit because I have something better. So if you're looking for part-time, I'll take it. If you want somebody full-time and you don't mind them dropping to part-time later on, that's fine too. I'm putting the ball in your court. I was very upfront with him. So right. I'm certain that's the big reason why. He was looking for somebody who could fill a full-time position and stay there.
Right.
So
yeah. I mean, it's up to you if you want to go back and follow up or not. If it's a place that you want to work at. I mean, obviously, if it isn't a place you don't want to work at, me personally, I still think it's polite just to do the follow up and be like, I understand I'm not a candidate, blah blah blah. I want to let you know that it's okay that I'm not interested, and it's I don't know. I'm struggling with words right now to be like, it's okay. I don't want to work for you either.
If I don't hear back from county services, I will make a move then and let them know that my availability has opened up.
Makes sense.
And then lastly, I spent the weekend in Cincinnati with Dozer. We were photographing Tri-State Leather Rubber Pup Weekend. It's a contest for the tri-state area of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. There were other people from other areas as well. It was a fun weekend overall. I'm incredibly tired. We had to rush home because we were in just this god-awful hotel. Oh, and this is going to make way more sense to you, Gary, when I say why, because you were questioning somebody's post about it.
I think I already know. Go ahead.
So we get into the hotel, and there's lots of kinksters walking around, and then all of a sudden, Dane and I are standing there, and I'm like, why are all these cheerleaders around? And as we're going through the hotel and up to our room, we realize there's a cheerleading competition going on at the hotel as well. We are sharing the floors with them, sharing the elevators, sharing the public spaces with 14-year-old girls. And I'm just like, oh my God, whose fuck up was this at the hotel? That they couldn't block these floors of these rooms off for us and those ones for them or whatever. I get that it's a large hotel and it has the capability of hosting multiple people or groups, but seriously, who didn't think of that? 14-year-old girls, half-naked guys walking around in kink gear. There was one point in the weekend that the parents of said cheerleaders had enough of the guys in the uniforms and the puppy gear and the fact that they're wearing a jock with a hanky down the back, getting on the elevator with their 14-year-old daughters, that they made a complaint about it. And the hotel's like, as long as there's no nudity, there's nothing we can do about it. They're in public spaces just as you're in public spaces. So kind of good on them. There were two banks of elevators. There was a north tower and a south tower. Mostly everybody was using the south tower, but every once in a while people would be on the north tower. The north tower led right into the ballroom area. Like, you came out of the elevator and turned, and there was the coat check and bar for us, and just beyond that were the doors for the ballroom. Lots of kink folk walking in and out of that area, and finally somebody at the hotel put up huge signs, like right when you get off the elevator, that says minors are not permitted beyond this point. And I'm like, why didn't you think of that beforehand? So yeah, it was overall the contest went well. I was busy photographing stuff, so I didn't really pay attention to a lot of like the speeches and things. I know that Onyx had brought up Miss Tammy on stage to give her an award for something, but I don't know what it was.
Yay.
Some type of community service for Onyx, obviously. But I didn't actually hear the speech. There's going to be a new Ms. Tri-State Leather contest coming up next year, which I'm interested in knowing more about, considering we've gotten in contact with the Klondikes and their organization. So I'm going to be getting in contact with those people to find out if I could volunteer somehow. But yeah, and checking out, we knew that we had to be, Dane and I both knew we got to be on the road. I need to be home by 1:30. He needs to be back in Columbus by 1:30. So we timed it, and we're checking out, and it took us a good hour just to get out of our hotel room because we get on an elevator. Once we got on the elevator, it took forever to get his car, and I just ended up just taking all of our shit, hauling it all to the back of the hotel, and I'm like, I'm not going to deal with any of this shit anymore. Just go get the car, meet me back here, and then we'll take off. And yeah, we ran like an hour late. That's why I'm coming out of the show all out of breath.
Okay. Are you good now? Are you able
Yeah,
to...
vented. I'm done.
Okay. The only thing I want to say about the event that you went to is I am sitting here with this stupid Cheshire grin on my face because all that I keep thinking about is that Polish proverb / saying, which is "Not my circus, not my monkeys." So, because I wasn't in charge of it, I am highly amused by the fact that they had these issues because I'm like, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that could have been done, in preparation to avoid some of the concerns and the things that were faced. While I agree that you think that the hotel did good by making a statement to the other entities or whoever was complaining about the adultness, so to speak, that legally there isn't anything wrong with that. If that's all they did, that's really a shame on the hotel property, because whenever somebody comes to you with a complaint from a customer service perspective, you should be making an attempt to help the situation, not make it worse. And by make it worse, when they just simply say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, but that's not appeasing the customer. And in this case, the customer has every right to turn around and go up the corporate chain, especially if it's a franchise. They're going to get their ass handed to them, literally. They'll complain and say, this is bullshit. We had minors that were present. This was obviously an adult function. We should have been given a heads up. There were other things. And I could see a person like me being on that side of the fence as a cheer daddy, quote unquote, because apparently that was a thing this weekend. If there were one of me on the other side of the fence, I could see them holding the hotel to task and being like, I'm sorry, you mismanaged the shit out of this. That's not how you do that. And it's worse hearing you say now, well, there's 2 towers and blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of like, really? Really? Wow. That's unfortunate. And they really come across as all they want is the money, and they don't give a flying fuck or a fart about anything. You know what I mean?
That is kind of how it was, is they only really cared about the money. Regarding Cheer Daddy, this is kind of why I was bringing it up, and because I saw your comment about Cheer Daddy, or not about it. It was somebody else made a comment, and you were trying to figure out what we were talking about. Hospitality suite for the volunteers, employees, the staff involved for Tri-State was in a normal hospitality suite type room at a hotel. Mm-hmm. Directly across the hall is a small meeting room, small conference room, where the cheerleaders were practicing. I literally mean, here is our door. Directly across the hall is the entrance door for them. So when we're talking about cheer daddies, it's because there were 30 cheerleaders packed into this conference room, and sitting outside in the hall are youngsters playing on their Nintendo or their iPads or whatever, or dads sitting there playing on their iPads and whatnot, because moms are all in the room with the cheerleaders, dads and small kids are outside because they're dragged there. So when when Ray Smith is talking about cheer daddies, that's what he's talking about. It's all of the daddies walking around, all the straight guys. Yeah, the stroller meat walking around on the at the property with us.
Stroller meat, I love it.
Yeah, Ray. So what happened was, to let our audience know, what we're referring to is Ray had posted on Facebook and said, apparently Cheer Daddy is a thing he's into now, and he just was trying to figure out if he flagged a green and white pom pom in his back pocket, if that's if that's how you signal that. And see, my context was I didn't know there was a cheerleading competition going on in the hotel, so I hadn't seen anybody else in my Facebook thread. Thanks, Facebook. So it's like I don't understand where this just came out of the blue, and I was like, question mark? Because I was like, that's completely random. And then I started putting together pieces from other folks, and I went, oh, now I sort of understand where that's coming from. And yeah, this is not as good as the story I heard about Bear Pride in Chicago and the year that they shared the hotel with the Jewish rabbi convention. Because apparently rabbis do not take kindly, especially Orthodox Jews, to men hitting on them when they get in an elevator. So, and then there's the other year, apparently at a different hotel at Bear Pride, or it was at IML, that the firefighters convention was in the same building. So that supposedly is the one in which urban legend is that the wives raised holy hell because their husbands kept disappearing. So there are many, many stories to be told over the years about what happens at bear runs and the spaces that we share with other folks. So this is a first for me hearing about a cheer event. So it's kind of interesting, and it's also unfortunate that people had to not have an enjoyable.
Cheer daddies disappeared.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So for me, I'm just trying to keep my head above the waterline. I don't know what else to say. Work is insane. I was told this week that I'm being pulled away from the thing that I've been doing for years on end, and I'm now focusing on this new client project, and I have to immaculately train another developer on everything that I do for all these years in my background. So that's a problem. Yeah. So it's just busy, and I knew that it was going to get busy through year end. And it's about to be Turkey Day, and then it's going to be December, and then it's going to be Midwest Bear Fest, and then it's going to be Christmas, and then it's going to be New Year's. Jesus, it's just like.
And then NAB and Claw and French Fur.
Yeah, NAB is. At least we got a space between New Year's and NAB, at least in my calendar so far. So.
By the way, Drew gave the reason why those firefighter husbands disappeared. It was fire hose training.
They're priming their pumps.
They're something. They're doing something. That being said, Edward, our illustrious guest who's joining us today, what's going on in your world?
Oh my gosh. Lots of stuff. So I'm currently in the process of applying to the clinical human sexuality PhD program at my school, Widener University. So, currently I'm a social work MSW student and human sexuality MED student. So I would just be transitioning into a PhD, which is really exciting. But also really stressful. So I got that going on. And then this week is pretty crazy. So after we wrap up this, I'm going into Philly to go see Mark Broussard in concert. Definitely one of my favorite singers. And then, just a crazy week. So I'm going to New York on Wednesday to see a show. Not sure what show. We're going to do get the tickets the day of. And then staying in Jersey for 2 days. I guess I'm staying in Jersey for the rest of the week. So Thanksgiving with my family. So me and the Hubs are going. Are going to see them, and then I'm going with a bunch of my friends to Santa Saturday in Asbury Park. So we're doing that on. We're going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that'll be a lot of fun. So I'll get my daddy bear fix.
Nice. I don't know who Edward. No, I don't know who Mark Broussard is.
Ooh, so Mark Broussard. So he is a kind of like Southern, like folky R&B crooner. Have you ever heard the song "Home"?
Maybe it's not ringing a bell right now, but
I might. All right, I may have to send out a link, but really good, like really graspy, like growly kind of voice. He's really hot. That's
the part I'm kind of focusing on. No offense, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. Yeah, he's definitely easy on the eyes.
I'm like, oh, who is this bearded dude with a guitar? That's kind of cool. But I'm scrolling through images on Google. Ooh, I am getting a history of his like evolution because I'm seeing young baby face. I'm seeing goatee. I'm seeing like when he was slimmer and he has a girl on his arm, and then I've already read that he's got a wife, Sonia, which is very nice.
Yeah. But we can't win them all.
Hey, that doesn't mean there isn't an opportunity.
That's very true.
It just means that the lifelong commitment probably isn't much of an option at the moment. So yeah,
that's fair. That's a fair statement.
Are you gonna see Adam when you're in Philadelphia?
I may actually see Adam a little bit later.
Okay. Will you please ferry a hug to him from me?
I definitely will. Yeah, I think I'm having dinner with him, my buddy Shane, and my bestie Steve.
Okay. He's one of my favorite people that I always love seeing at Tidal Wave. So this last year when you guys showed up at Drenched Fur, that was a special treat for me. Even though I didn't really get to socialize with him much, but it was still nice to see him.
Oh, there's always more time. Yeah, that was really great. And actually the thing that came out of that with me and Adam, the stump, has definitely stayed its course. So he's definitely one of my really, really good friends now.
We're just going to let that go.
Yeah.
Wait,
let's talk about that off air.
What, Stomp?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because apparently Gary and I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, right. Something that happened. So on the way to Drenched Fur, last year we were driving and we passed by this like funeral home, which name was Stump Funeral Home.
Oh.
And we just thought that was absolutely ridiculous. So for the entire Drenched Fur last year, we would just yell "Stump" at each other, and it just has never ended. So everything is, we call each other Stumpy. Yeah.
So it's not a mating call per se,
okay,
but
more just like a "I'm lost, come find me." Stump.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. I got nothing.
I got nothing.
Are we ready to move into feedback?
Almost.
Now, whoever thought we'd be doing commercials?
I know I sure as heck didn't.
Being that we're a smaller scale podcast, we don't have advertisers knocking down our door to give us money, and that's okay.
Which is why we want to take a moment and tell you about two really great ways you can support Cubs Out Loud.
Over the past 9 years, COL has produced hundreds of audio episodes, and now we have matching video episodes for you to enjoy.
This year, we introduced the new COL logo and launched our new merch store over at Zazzle.com/CubsOutLoud.
Or you can also use the COL merchandise link on our podcast website to pull up the online store.
Here you can take a look through a range of products, including t-shirts, hats, poker chips, underwear, backpacks, and various other things with the COL logo on them.
And keep an eye out for new things to be added based on your interests and requests.
We typically can be found showing these great items off in the video stream of our shows.
Also, to help with our new format, we're doing YouTube video shows that help create the audio version. We have a GoFundMe campaign underway at gofundme.com/COLstream.
This campaign allows us to afford upgrading the PC that Jeff uses to produce our shows. Plus, A better computer means better quality streams.
And thanks in advance for not only listening to Cubs Out Loud, but helping support the podcasts too. Hooray.
I have my Texas Orange t-shirt on, even though I kind of want a sweatshirt because it's actually getting, down in the 60s.
Oh no,
Here.
60s.
You poor thing. I am wearing the all too classic for me milk chocolate brown sweatshirt, hoodie. In fact, I was just talking about this morning. I had brunch with my besties who were in town for another function, and we went and had brunch, and we were talking about sweatshirts, hoods, and stuff like that. And I said I never was a person who liked hooded sweatshirts. I wanted one with a zipper so I didn't feel like closed in. But ours don't, obviously, because that would suck, because that would just, cut the logo in half, and that's not cool. But I don't know. This has become like my thing. It's my go-to. I wear it all the time. So that's my thing. What about you, Chester? Are you wearing any Cubs Out Loud paraphernalia or merch?
If I say a cock ring, do I get to show it?
Wow.
No, YouTube, unfortunately. We haven't posted those to the store
Nope.
yet. Anyways.
Just the lovely flag.
Aw. Anyways, let's get right into this. So we got a bunch of feedback, but we're going to abbreviate some of it and get to some of it next show. So, Gary, what's been going on over in Facebook land?
All right. In Facebook land, we got a series of likes, so we would like to thank the following people for liking us on Facebook. Courtney Chesser. Wonder who that is. Paul Lanner. Hey, Paul. Joshua Pangborn.
Yay!
Wonder who that is. E. Dean Davis. Hey, Dean. Ryan O'Keefe. Hey, girl, what's going on? Because she's from my own hometown. And John Riley, who holds a dear place in my heart. For those of you that don't know, John Riley is the co-creator of Drunch Fur in the very first year at the beginning. He's the person that came up with the idea of going to the water park, so I owe it all to him.
So it's about time that he liked the page.
Well, I don't put pressure on people that I know to be supportive, but that's awesome that they did.
Over in the YouTubes, we've got Job Besmonte who subscribed to us, as well as someone by the name of Courtney Chesser.
This Courtney person.
I know.
She's
like liking us all over the place.
She gets around. Oh, quick side note on Courtney. She was supposed to be at Tri-State this weekend. Her and Jade had car trouble on the way there and ended up having to turn around and go back to Louisville. So I was looking forward to seeing her, but I didn't.
Oh, no.
She didn't end up making it.
And did we want to do the Tumblr stuff, or were we skipping that too?
Nope, we can do Tumblr really quick. We do have new Tumblr followers. We have Maple Leaf Cub. Sexy.
Oh, who happens to be on our pedestal right now too?
Is he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. We did put him up there a while ago.
And he's still there because
he's still there.
He deserves it.
Well, yeah. We have San Maba 97, Chocolate Bear Al 84, Ursa Rod, The Howling Bear, The Golden Alakazam, and Chaser MTL.
Thank you for following.
There we go.
Yay! Awesome stuff.
So
We do have some feedback on Tumblr, but we're going to save that again for later.
So I think it's time that we move into our main topic. Gary?
Hey, so a little behind the curtain kind of thing. For those of you that didn't get to hear any of the pre-show, here's a shocker. I already know Edward. However, I didn't ask him to be on the show. Now, that isn't because he doesn't deserve to be here. It's because I didn't think about it. And so Chester's like, hey, I think we should have Edward on. This would be an interesting topic to discuss. And I was like, oh, okay. So for those of you that haven't necessarily known, Edward is a friend of mine from online and in real life because he's been to my event at Drench Fur and he's actually done a workshop there. And so it's an interesting kind of natural evolution that you're joining over here in the Cubs Out Loud podcast realm. So, given your background in education, I believe you recently did a presentation on the subject of today's show, which is the fall of gay bars. Or more accurately, I think you maybe wrote a paper called The Decline of Gay Bars.
Yeah, so I wrote a paper. It was called The Decline of Gay Bars, Current Research and Future Trends, about a year ago for my first class in my human sexuality graduate work.
Great. So, but you did a presentation, I think, in the past 2 or 3 months, maybe on the paper. Am I correct?
Yeah. So at my school, they celebrate LGBT History Month. So we got notification that they were looking for people to take part and to be presenters. So I gave them a proposal to talk about like the history of gay bars and then also like, you know, where we're at right now with everything. And it went well. It was a really good topic.
So, you strike me as an individual from what I know as very out at work in your workplace, at least as far as school, that kind of stuff. Did you find doing the research for this paper and then presenting on it challenging on a personal level, or was it just kind of part of what you think is the normality of your life and your education career and stuff?
So interestingly enough, this whole topic came about because of Pulse. When Pulse happened, there was like this movement from the community to be like, you know, these are our safe spaces, you know, very naturally. And I had a interesting reaction to that, being like, well, then where have you been? You know, like, if this, you know, this is such a safe space, like, why have there been so many gay bars that have been closing? So, you know, that was right before this class started, and we were talking about, like, my professor, Dr. Brent Satterley, definitely a really big influence to this entire project, was like, write about a problem that you see in human sexuality. So, I was like, well, let me write it. Let me see if there actually is a decline in gay bars. So this just tends to be a natural evolution of where I'm going with my education, if that makes sense.
No, so this wasn't something that you had been thinking about for a long time and pursuing. It's not like for the past 5 to 10 years, you're like, oh, someone really should be working on this or looking into it. It was more prompted by the massacre that happened and thinking about, well, this is an invasion of what we call a safe space, because now we question the concept of that title or that label.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the first gay bar I ever went to closed, I would say about 10 years ago, I guess about now. So, but like even before that, it was starting its, you know, kind of decline. So, you know, these thoughts have been evolving ever since then, but I just thought it was the bar I went to per se. I didn't know that like this was something that was happening on like a national and actually a global level.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you know, definitely what you're talking about with like the spaces, are evolving.
So, go ahead, Chester.
Well, when you say evolving, that means that they're going from one entity to another. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about that entity ceasing to exist.
Right, yeah. Like, you know, like, you know, when we're talking about a decline, like, So, ever since like the 1970s, there have definitely been like a decline in the amount of gay bars that there have been on a national level, right? But then, like what I would say is that because of that, like, yeah, there's a decline in the gay bars, but they're kind of like shifting into something that isn't like a gay specific space. If that makes sense. Like there are some gay bars that are changing from like gay bars to like gay friendly bars, where it's like a mixed crowd rather than like, just like, like the gay bar that we, come to know. But yeah, like, so like the idea of space in the gay community is changing and it's evolving. So like where like the spaces that we used to have known, aren't there anymore. And we're having to like adapt into like, okay, well then what is space? What is our community?
Right. I understand everything that you've said so far about the place that you used to visit ended up closing. And you never really thought about it as, something broader or it happening other places or around the world in a grand scope. It's always been very, like, oh, well, that was my home bar, and I remember that place. You don't really think about all the other ones. In your research, have you noticed any of those places that have gone from a bar to possibly changing into something else? A different type of LGBTQ type of safe space?
Yeah, like a lot of what do you call it? Suburban bars, like in the 90s, like because of competition with other bars had to change their model from a gay specific space to like I was talking about, like a gay friendly space. So like that's actually what happened to the bar that I grew up in. Like it was like a gay specific space, and then at one point they just shifted to a all are welcome type of space. So there was initially a lot of pushback from the LGBT population where I grew up. But then it then after I don't know how long, but it just changed into like a restaurant, to like a nondescript kind of restaurant where it wasn't a all are welcome. It was just, this isn't even a, we're not even going to label it as like a gay friendly space. But yeah, like, so a lot of like the suburban restaurants and everything are, that I have seen, have had to like make a decision to either close or to change their model of the bar.
So when you were kind of looking into this, did you find, I don't know if you can really speak to this or not, did you see it as an absolute trend? Like it's unequivocal, yes, this exactly exists, and you can start to attribute things to it specifically?
Yeah, like, so the factors that go along with this that are like current research, that I find were like technology was a factor of this. Like people not feeling like they need to go out anymore because they have
Dialectic.
Exactly, right? Like they have so Grindr was, of course, the first what I call geosocial networking application, which definitely had an impact of how we socialize as a community. So I even remember like when that came about, being on my couch and being like, well, damn, like, I'm somebody who doesn't drink. I don't, I'm sober. So like going to a bar is kind of a trigger for me. So, oh, I don't have to go to a bar to meet somebody now. So like that was a positive for me. But like other factors that came about were like the growing acceptance of the LGBT population, which in turn made it so that we don't necessarily have to feel like we need a specific space to feel accepted. which I feel like, you know, as a community, we've been moving towards, but that comes with its positives and its negatives, you know, like, sure, yeah, we get accepted, but then we lose the space, or we lose the space that we have created for so long. And then also some areas that I was looking into were what I'm calling the bachelorette party phenomenon. And then also like millennial ideas of what space and community means, because there is research to show that like younger LGBT folk don't see community the way that older LGBT folk see it. You know, there's like this idea of like invisibility versus visibility, which is really interesting. So, you know, these are definitely research ideas that I plan on focusing a lot of my attention if and when I do my dissertation.
All right, I want to circle back around to the what is it? The bridal shower phenomenon?
The bridal party phenomenon?
Bridal party phenomenon? Yeah, the bachelor party phenomenon. So is there research already done or evidence like documenting this, or is this more kind of like just what you see in social media, like people voicing opinions about?
So there definitely is a buzz about it. Like when I was doing my research, that was like, I can't find definitive research, but I found like articles from the community that were saying, you know, this is something that's like, that's bothersome. So, you know, like things that I would like to look into is this occurrence actually changing the patterns of people going out? You know, and, you know, just for those who don't know what I'm referencing, just the idea that like straight women are coming into gay spaces, you know, relatively uninvited or invited, and they're causing conflict for the people, for the gay patrons or the LGBT patrons who are there.
This is a personal opinion. I have seen many hen parties show up in gay bars, and it's never been a problem for me. Sure, they're a bit loud, and they're there to have fun, and I think part of the reason that they're there is because they know that they're going to be in the space and not have to worry about men hitting on them.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I'm sure the pushback from the LGBT community is coming from, this is our space that you are coming into, and it makes me uncomfortable because you show up to it and you're, you know, kind of making a mockery. Like you're pointing a finger. And while we're okay with it because this is our space, you're not okay with it and you think it's funny. It's interesting when people make comments about this because they're often talking about drag bars.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it starts to get mind-blowing for me because there's a performer on stage. That's their job, is to be entertaining, and entertain is what they're going to do, part of which is making fun of the people that are there. So how can gay men complain that these straight women are in our space to make fun of the drag queen when the drag queen is getting paid to be made fun of?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it necessarily that way. The circumstances that I understand is, I agree with you, Chester, that the bars that they go into may have drag entertainment, but the issue isn't about the drag queens. It's about the fact that, for lack of a better reference, and I'm going to totally misquote this, RuPaul actually kind of like made a public comment and about this very topic of, you come into our space, this is not a people aquarium. This is not a homo zoo. You don't get to come in and like observe us amongst us, like immerse and think that your behavior is acceptable just because you're like friends with us. There comes a point where the behavior becomes an issue, and the bigger thing is about being loud, being disrespectful, sexually assaulting or harassing other patrons. Because we're gay men, it's okay to touch our ass, to touch our chest, to touch our dick, like, and it's okay because we're not straight. Like it's like no, not at all. Like it's not okay anywhere, any place, anytime with anybody. And your inebriation does not excuse that. Like, or my inebriation doesn't excuse that.
Yeah, Gary, I actually have the quote here because I did. This is part of my my paper, so I included this in the research. So RuPaul said that people who live in the mainstream and the status quo think that everyone is there to serve them. If they are going as a group of girls as a way so that they don't really have to go outside their wheelhouse, they're tourists. It's not really saying you are fierce and I'm going to respect you for who you are. They, the gay men, are there as a party clown. So like, I was really trying to find a link between that because, I have had straight friends who genuinely will say, oh, me and my husband went to a gay bar and we had a lot of fun. It was a really good time. Like we saw a lot of, like, it seemed like there was a leather event going on and it was really cool. And I while I really love the
enthusiasm,
to me, it's like kind of like tourism, right? Like cultural tourism. And I remember I was really struggling with a word to describe that. And one of my fellow students, I was describing it and she was like, oh, it's kind of like, a tourist, like a cultural tourist. And I'm like, holy shit. Yes. And I don't know how I feel about that. Right. Because, I have brought a lot of straight people with me to gay bars and had a lot of fun and everything. And I think my issue is that when it becomes not invitation, like you're coming on your own accord. That's where I'm like, that's where I don't know, because I feel like it can go both ways. But that's why I want to look at the motivations of straight women for going to gay bars and possibly see, what they are,
Mm-hmm. Well, Drew in our live chat brought up an interesting point. He said a lot of times they don't understand boundaries because they think / know it is a safe space. So I think that goes both. It could be two different ways. It could be they don't understand boundaries because they don't know that it technically is a safe space. And they also don't follow boundaries because they know it is a safe space, meaning it gets warped because they think it's a safe space. It's like behavior is acceptable. No, there's still just decent human norms. That's all that is. And I think about how the gay community is modified over time and I guess maybe evolved. And I don't know where I feel about this because not everyone has this relevant awareness. There was a time when going to a gay bar was like going to a private club. I just watched a movie my dad had given me on DVD. He knows I'm a big fan of Eddie Izzard, and he and Matt LeBlanc were in a movie called All the Queen's Men. And he found it on DVD for at a pawn thrift shop or something real cheap. And so he gave it to me and I watched it last night. And I knew the concept was about during the war that the British intelligence had actually had men dress up in drag or as women to go under enemy lines to try to get an Enigma code machine from the Nazis. It's farcical. It's not meant to be accurate. But one of the interesting things is that in the beginning of the movie, there's a gay bar that gets revealed. And when they get to the door, you have to give a passcode in order to get into the bar. And that was a part of our culture. Bars were like speakeasies, basically. They replaced speakeasies. They were, back bars. They were, private membership only clubs, supper clubs. There was a lot of that dynamic, and it was a part of creating our safe space. We wanted to make sure that we were going to be okay. And then we get into the 60s, and we have the raids that are going on. We end up with Stonewall. And so we have the I guess what we call the gay liberation movement that evolves. And over time, we moved into being more publicly out, being more aware. And I think part of that brought also everybody's money is acceptable. And so the business environment changed. And now we have anybody can come through the door and they can have a drink, they can get food, they can, have some entertainment, whatever it is the venue provides. But there's, I think, this like generational issue that there are older individuals that remember, like, when I went to this space, it's because this is where I met other people. This is where I could, be myself. Notably, also, it's where I could, hook up. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. And younger generations don't necessarily have that history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that doesn't create the conflict, but I think it contributes to a portion of perspective about whether or not they see that this is a safe space or what that can provide for a person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So my point of bringing that up is I don't know how I feel about the bridal party, bachelorette party, whatever situation. I've seen firsthand obnoxious behavior by drunk, presumably hetero women in a gay space. And it completely turned me off. And then what I realized now, thinking about it, is it wasn't the fact that they were women. It wasn't the fact that they were presumably heterosexual. It's the fact that they were just obnoxious and drunk. Like, I would have felt that way if it was a bunch of, like, woo-woo boys, running around and screaming and hollering and carrying on and stuff. It's like...
Woo-woo boys?
Well, anyways.
Are they any different than the ones who go through the bar going, yes! Over everything?
Well, that's probably what's replaced the whoop whoop kind of thing. Like, I imagine now everybody just says gas to everything.
I am one of those people that will scream down a hallway, yes! Queen!
Me
for
too.
no reason?
No, there's usually a reason.
Right.
Because I got off the elevator. I don't know.
You might want to do a little self-work on that affirmation stuff. So, no. The thing is that, there's a time and a place, in my personal opinion, for everything. And I know that I can be a bit of a curmudgeon. Like, there are times and places that I'm like, that's really not acceptable. And other people will be like, oh, get your stick out of your ass. That's fine. I think there's a good middle ground. But there is a point where it's like, no, this is just too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's really kind of where that piece of it comes. So when you call it like the phenomenon, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would call it phenomenon. I would call it like a weird cultural blip, because I don't know if it has the same resonance today at this point in November of 2017 as it did in the summer of like 2015 or the summer of 2016, where that seemed to be like part of the trend of discussion. I think there was a lot of folks that, like, it was a hot topic, so to speak. It was a thing that people were addressing. And then when gay celebrities, like, for example, RuPaul Charles, comes out and says, no. Like, you don't get to treat us as like something to be objectified and observed or whatever. Like, we're all human beings. You're welcome to be in the space, but mind yourself. Like, there's an appropriateness level. So
yeah,
I mean, and that quote that you had read was like something that I kind of resonated with. I was like, yeah, I kind of feel that way. Like, there a lot of times I have certain thoughts, but I just can't figure out the right way to say it. And then I appreciate that we have people in the world or people in my lives that say things a certain way, and I'm like, yes, that's what I've been trying to figure out how to say. I just couldn't come up with it on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's one of like the difficult things with research is that it happens after the fact, right? That like like a lot of times you'll want to do research on something, or like one of my professors was always like, the research, like you'll be reading about that in 2 years because like, professional academic research takes time to do. So like you can't you can't think that there's going to be a journal article on this in like right now, So that's definitely one of the struggles that I find, especially with like a community that is like forever evolving, like we are changing at very rapid rates these past like 10 years,
So what did your paper ultimately come across with, like, as a conclusion in terms of this topic?
So conclusions are that like, sure, like there are things that are definitely affecting like the rate of like, gay bars, like gay bar attendance. So like, like the cell phones, attitudes. One of the things is that even like LGBT neighborhoods, like people are moving out of them in big rates because they don't need to live in these places to feel accepted, right? And then also with, gentrification and everything, those are also contributing factors as well and increasing costs. But like, where I kind of ended it is more on like a question, like where is this headed? Like where are we going? Is this a cyclical change? Is this something that will like turn around? Like, is there going to be like a resurgence of gay spaces? Is this a permanent thing? Like, is this kind of like the goal that we've always been working towards, right? Like, like equality. Is this equality? And like, as a community, do we just need to accept this? That like, this is what is happening. And then also, is this temporal? So like with the AIDS crisis of the 80s, there was a definite flock out of the gay bars and out of gay spaces because of fear. But like over time that changed. So is this just like another example of that, where it's just because there's been a resurgence of equality that like we want to bask in that, and that after a certain amount of time that we're going to come back together. And then, in like final thoughts is that with the current political climate, is that going to have an impact? And is there going to be more of a resurgence of gay, like collective behavior, where we come together as a community? So I think it's this research was more of a like, where am I going? Like what else is out there,
It's interesting that you put it that way, because Chester and I had just talked recently, I think it was on last Sunday's show, about the bar that we went to in Columbus. There's a space called Club Diversity, and it's a renovated turn of the century home, and it's a multi-space. It's a bar, but it has like a public performance theater space on the second floor. It has a kitchen. It has like a kind of a social kind of meeting room area. It has a back patio. It has a lot of different. It's a multi-space. It's multifunctional. And one of the things that I really got taken by is I was kind of like, wow, this really speaks to me like a new community center kind of concept. Like, yes, it's a bar, but it's not just a bar. And it's not just an entertainment venue, meaning it's not just, a bar with a stage where presumably drag will take place. It's more other things as well. It can be rented, it can be utilized, you can have meetings, you can, do different stuff. And I really, I guess it just really kind of touched me in a way that I was like, if this is the future, like if this is how we kind of reclaim space and stay, I guess, existing, I prefer that model. Only because, like in Erie, over the course of the years here, we've had a number of gay bars, but I think the most at any time we had was maybe 3 or 4, and we're at 1. And it's interesting because people come into town and they'll reach out to me on, a website, an app, an email, or whatever, and they'll say, where's the leather bar? And I think to myself, ooh, girl, yeah, there's no leather bar, like, and there's no bear bar. There's no lesbian bar. There's no cowboy bar. Like, there's just a bar. That's it. Like, and it serves everybody, but even then, it's not necessarily serving everybody. It's not meant to be a criticism, but it's more about the population that goes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I feel in a way, I'm very much of my generation, that I think a business can do really well when it inserts itself and involves itself in a community. I long for the days of history. I hear in my local, where I grew up at, that there was a bar that was owned by a lesbian couple that, brought together and created softball teams, and every Sunday had a potluck function. I mean, they did a lot of things, and I'm kind of like, oh, I really miss that stuff, because yeah, it was a bar and it was a business, and put a roof over their heads and gave them a ability to live, but at the same time, it brought together a grouping. Mind you, this community though was at a different time. This was pre and then into, the AIDS crisis situation and that kind of stuff. So, but to me, I'm kind of like, that can still exist now, but I don't know. I hear a lot of people of my generation talk about that the younger generation doesn't care, that they don't need a bar because it's okay to be gay. You can just go wherever the hell you want. You can do whatever you want. And as we joke about, oh, I can dial a dick, so I don't know if there are other people that would, if there's enough, I guess, population that would agree with that concept that we could reclaim spaces, we just modify them to be broader in terms of the needs or what they provide for services.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I feel like there definitely is a discord of like what is important intergenerationally, like, what is important to our generation, to like the Gen Xers and everything, just doesn't seem to be important to the millennial or the younger generation, which isn't a bad thing, right? Like it's not, but like I think that it would be important to like build a bridge to like say, okay, well, what is important to both of us, right? Like how can we exist in the same community where we can build ourselves up and not tear ourselves down across generational lines? Because like what you were talking about, like creating a space with like multi-spaces, like that's really cool. And I think that like going back to a model where like the bar is like not the bar, but like there is a singular space that like can motivate the community to act and to like to make things happen like within the community, like the local community. I think that's where we should be moving. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I'm wondering, and this is going to tie into what prompted me even to come to you and ask you to be on the show. A few weeks ago, when you presented this paper, and you're going to have to fill me in on the details because I don't remember all of the details for it. Mm-hmm. You were presenting the paper where?
So I was presenting the paper at the at school for a bunch of undergrads. Okay.
And the one thing that I took out of when you made this post on your Facebook, the one thing that I took out of it was that you were a bit taken aback by the fact that the younger generation was not aware of keystone points in LGBT history, things like Stonewall or Harvey Milk. These are very important points in our history that the younger generation doesn't know about. So I'm going to try and segue into my next question. Knowing that kids today have it somewhat easier being open and out, and that they can go to any space and be okay with being themselves, do you think that that is also part of the reason why gay bars are declining? Because they're just not like, well, why do I need to go to a gay bar when I can go to this bar over here?
110%. Yeah. And I think that's also the reason why there is like kind of a lack of, I don't want to say importance, but like, I'll just say importance about our history, that like I don't have to know, when like they have the world at their fingertips, like I had to know this stuff by going to a gay bar. Like there was, like three, like insanely critical people to my development as a young gay man who told me all of the things that like Chester, you were talking, or Gary, you were talking about like a password, like that stuff sends chills up my spine, that like we have a secret history, that like was like our protection. Like, it was it was between life or death, that like, we needed to know these things in order to survive. And like one of my friends was reminding me about dropping pins, you know, like the things that we would do in order to tell somebody that we were gay.
Tap, tap, wiggle, wiggle.
Yeah, you know, like the one that I know when I was really young, somebody would say the wait 2 seconds and look back. Like when you pass somebody and then what is it? I don't remember. It was like something delay. I don't know if anybody else knows about that.
I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I don't remember the term. A few weeks ago, Gary was discussing how he was driving home from somewhere, or driving to somewhere. I don't remember specifically. But he was getting cruised in his car. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then the other guy did the tap where he tapped his brake lights. And then I knew for sure he was cruising me. And I went, the hell are you talking about? What is this? Because I had never heard of that form of signaling when you were cruising. So
I love it.
I'm 41, and I've been out and proud since I was 95, or since 1995.
Wow, Chester.
You're that old?
I look great for 95.
You do, girl.
I'm really kicking in that daddy status. So I've been out since 1995, and you know, I've learned most gay history and things, you know, like the secret code. I've had to learn all of that through my friends or through personal research or reading about it here and there. So when Gary's talking about this, and I'm like scratching my head, the hell are you talking about? I've never heard of this. So it's no wonder that younger generations aren't at all familiar with it either.
Yeah. And I think that, like, that's kind of where I want to fix that, right? Like, I want to be that bridge. Like, for my dissertation, I would love to create spaces where, like, younger generations and older generations can share their experiences and you know, what has it been like for them and what has it been for like the older generation, and to like trade those stories, and find, you know, areas of, you know, this was scary for me. Oh, really? This was scary for me, you know? Because I think that is really lost, because there isn't the gay bar model where, there's a decrease in the gay bar model where the information is being transacted.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's one of the things that's a disappointment right now, is that we are losing legacy.
Yes.
And that's the part that I find frustrating, I guess. But then again, like, I know a little bit of history of my local area, but that's because I asked. And I'm different in that I grew up around mostly adults. So that affected my personality and my maturity, because I wanted to be an adult faster, sooner, talk amongst adults, and be seen from that perspective. So that really gave me I guess a very biased perspective to understand culture and where we come from and what it was like, because I was talking to older gay men who were able to tell me these things. So when I talk to someone who's older than me, who has either lived here previously or lives here now, and I make a mention of an older location, they just look at me like, how do you know that? Like, It's kind of like, girl, I didn't see you there. Given, you know, my age, I wouldn't know, because especially like the Washington Girl, it was gone long before I even showed up on the scene and came out.
I heard that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Drew had said in our chat, and refers to, he says, as happy as I am for more inclusion, the downside is the dilution of the amount of gay people in a bar, which makes it harder to meet other gay people or make a connection, and almost have to relearn a social navigation for determining who is and isn't gay, who you can flirt with, who you have a similar background with. And then he admits, he says, I am speaking as an older gay man. But I think that's absolutely fair perspective. And that's one of the things I know that happened since the late 90s around the millennium change to now that my generation has talked about, that we've been declining and changing as a community. You go out to a gay bar and it's not just, we call it a gay bar, but is it really a gay bar?
Yeah, like Woody's in Philadelphia, there's a lot of discussion about like, oh, that's not even a gay bar anymore because it's just filled with, like it's just like straight women. And, I just think that that's kind of goes back to what I was saying. This is just kind of like the evolution of like what we've been working towards. But like having to, like what Drew said, just kind of accept the downsides of it for us.
Well, it's interesting because Drew also made a comment, which I think goes to what you were talking about earlier, Edward, about the what was it? You used to call it the 2-second pause or something?
Yeah, it's like the walk, look away or something.
Right. So Drew says in our live chat, he goes, in the mall, it was always eye contact, crotch back to eyes. So eyes, crotch, eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then take 3 more steps and then look back over your shoulder to see if they responded.
Yep. Absolutely. There was a book that I received when I came out in 1998 called The Gay Manual. That like, really was helpful in telling me like all of the inside stuff. I don't even know if there's something similar to that. But yeah.
Chester, was it at Club Diversity we had this conversation about the left-right dom pocket, like hanky code stuff?
I don't remember having the conversation at Diversity, but we have had a conversation about that.
No, it was very recently because it was about flagging left-right, and I was trying to explain how I learned it. And I was explaining it, and then I got chastised for how I was trying to explain it. And I was like, hold up, like, let me finish what I'm trying to say. But the person told me that about the whole left-right dominance issue tied back to earrings, which is another culture kind of thing. And I was like, oh, how very interesting, like to hear different aspects of our own history about what was a signal. Like, I remember when I was in college, backwards baseball caps was a big thing. Like, that was oh yeah, I see Edwards, he's like making a face, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Like, if a guy was into giving, like, that was, I mean, it's kind of obvious when you think about it. It's like, well, yeah, get the brim out of the way, obviously.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like, in the 90s, that was a thing about, like, the way guys wore their hats. As kind of a signal thing, because the earring became unreliable, because the earring was a thing for a while. I think it was if you had an earring in only your left ear,
left is right, right is wrong.
Right, it was kind of a thing. Is that, Jeff, what you were referring to, like the earring part?
Yeah, that's why when I originally had my earring,
Mm-hmm.
it was in my right ear, or it's in my right ear. That's where the hole still is.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I got it was because, well, I'm not straight, so I can't have it in my left ear.
Interesting. Yeah, see, I never knew that thing that you just said about left is right, right is wrong. I never heard that about the earring. I was told when someone first explained the hanky code to me, I couldn't remember, or I said, how do you remember which side is which? Like, how do you remember left pocket versus right pocket, or left armband, right armband? Like how do you determine what it is? And this is a person who was involved in leather at the time, this is many years ago, like pre-claw actually, I believe, said to me, left is right, right is wrong. And I said, what? And then they said, yeah, and I was like, and the thing is, I was just retelling this recently to someone, and I got chastised because they were like, that's so hard to remember. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, it's actually relatively easy when you think about it. Yeah. And here's how it was explained to me. In the world, what hand is dominant?
You're right.
Right hand. Now think about the saying, left is right, right is wrong. Meaning, when you think that the right hand is dominant, that's why it's wrong. Right will not represent dominance. Left represents dominance. So when I explained this recently, someone was like, "Oh," and they were like, "Well, yeah. Now that I've heard it, I guess I won't be able to forget it." But it was this interesting, like, kind of like, and then someone else was correcting it or saying that they remembered what Jeff was saying about with the earring thing, and I'm like, well, I don't know anything about the earring. All I know is like that's how it was explained to me how to remember the hanky part, and I've never been able to forget it since then because I'm always like, oh, left is dom, right is not, right is submissive, like. So, my point in going into that is those cultural aspects, though, get carried through in some stuff, and I don't know how that really happens anymore in terms of like our legacy and our history if we don't have these spaces. And I don't know if you've even looked into this, Edward, at all about whether or not, and I doubt this is the case, you can find a statistical ratio or pattern in which, based on the number of no longer existing gay spaces, basically bars, there have been replacements, meaning cultural centers or community centers or non-profit like office locations or something, you know?
Yeah, the problem with that though is like, so a lot of the research, like in compiling the data about like how many gay bars there were versus how many the gay bars there are now, like that came from like a travel guide.
Damron?
It was called...
Because I used to collect Damrons. In fact, I just donated a few of them to the University of Minnesota, to their LGBT collections.
Yeah?
Yeah, they were like this thick. They look like a normal travel guide for any city that you pick.
Mm-hmm.
But inside the book, it would list, state and city, and here are the gay bars and their address and their phone number and their hours and what kind of clientele are there. It would list gay bars, bookstores, porn shops, well-known gay-owned businesses. Like, this is a lesbian coffee, or it's a coffee shop owned by lesbians.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just for the U.S. It was global. And I remember I had 6 or 7 of these because every time they'd come out with one, I'd buy one, even though I never really left the state of Ohio or Michigan at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was just always nice to have. But yeah, I right before I moved to Columbus, I was going through my belongings and I found them all, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do with them. I use the internet now. I just go on Google or ask my friends.
Right.
So I called up University of Minnesota. They have an LGBT library, and said, hey, I've got these Damrons. Would you like them? And I sent them a few. They put them in their collection.
So the source of that was Gay Yellow Pages.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
GAYELLOW.
And it's still around today as a website.
Yeah. So yeah, and like just to kind of go over that. So like let me see. Like let's look at like San Francisco, for example. So in 1973, there were 118 gay bars in San Francisco, and currently there are 33 listed. Whereas in like New York, give me one sec. Where's the New York one? Oh, in New York, in 1978, there were 86, and now there are 44. So, like, since 2005, there's been a 12.5 decrease in overall number of gay bars. Whereas mixed or gay-friendly bars, there's been a 42% increase, 352 to 502 between 2005 and 2011.
Interesting.
Right?
So, but in terms of that, like, it's about the decline of bars in terms of numbers, not so much like a correspondence that you can say for every 10 or 12 gay bars that have left, there's been a new nonprofit or community center or something that necessarily maybe help provide safe space or services.
Right. Yeah. I didn't look at that. But that would be, I think that would be interesting.
So, Drew just linked in our chat damron.com. And it is a functioning website where you can browse different gay destinations, events, tours. I see white party, women's white party, fetish pride Italy. I wonder if there's bear runs on here.
Yeah, the dam run was a big thing when I was younger. When you came out and you wanted to find gay spaces, not so much maybe just locally, but like especially if you went to travel someplace, having a guide was, and they made a new one every year. So that was the other hard part is like, okay, so you got the dam run guide for say 1995. Well, then when 96 rolled around, you had to go out and buy another one. Like then it's another 1995 or 39.95 or whatever the price was invested. And it was kind of pricey, but it was the only way you had an accurate, up-to-date knowledge, like basically portable internet, demographic base. It's like, oh, here's where you can find bathhouses, here's where you can find clubs, here's where you can find, venues, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I remember, and it's good to know that they're still existing, at least in terms of the web. But yeah, I agree that you had the one. Drew said that he kept a Damron in his glove compartment, and that and that's. I mean, I still have in the front of my car. I still have torn out pages from a Columbus bar kind of like booklet because it listed where the gay bars around the Columbus area were. And actually, now that I think about it, it was all of Ohio. And I tore those pages out of it's one you can take from a bar, take home. But I kept those specifically so if I was ever traveling in Ohio, I knew I could figure out where the gay bars were. And it's funny because I just thought of this probably in the past month or so. I was digging around looking through some stuff and I thought, do I really still need to hold on to these in today's day and age? But it brings up an interesting point, which I think will get us to the next thing in our doc about the first bars we ever went to and whether or not they're still around. Because in a way, it's a bit of historical archaeology to know that there were spaces or not anymore. But even today, I found it interesting to try to figure out whether or not the very first gay bar I ever went to is still around. Because I think there's a big presumption where oh, well, it's the digital age. Everybody's on the internet. They must have a Facebook page and a website, and all this kind of stuff in a Google account. And it's no, not necessarily. I bet there are still a number of establishments that are not as maybe tech savvy or wanting to be online per se, as strange as that may sound.
I do find it a little odd when a place isn't on Facebook. I will go on Facebook and look it up, and I'll be like, oh, they don't even have a web page. That's strange.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit generational. I think there's also an intention behind that if they decide they don't want to be on there. When I worked at Roseland Campground and Resort back in, let's see, when was this? Probably 2001, 2002, 2003, somewhere in that area. The gay bars, where they were located at, and if people knew about them, I've literally had the experience of going to a gay bar with my business co-manager from the campground resort to figure out where in the state some of the gay communities were, to try to get the word out, understandably, a little bit of marketing about the campground, but also just see, what's going on. We went to a town where there was a gay bar and we couldn't figure out how to get there necessarily. And luckily I had been told when you go there, you don't go in the front because the front door actually isn't a front door. It's the back door. And that the front door is actually in the alley behind the bar. So you would park on the street and you would walk a half block down, a half a block back to the alley, and then a half a block in because it wasn't in the middle, it was in the middle of buildings. It wasn't on an end. And when you got to the door, if the Christmas lights were on outside the door, it means they were open for business and someone was there.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you would knock on the door and get in. And here's the thing. This place was a huge dance club, but we went like on a Thursday night or something, or a Wednesday night. So it was a very off night. So when you go in, what we went into was this very, like, aged bar. It felt like it was vintage out of the 70s. I'll never forget, there was wood paneling everywhere. There wasn't shag carpet, but there probably should have been. There was a tiny little like counter
the
bar
shagging happened in the bathroom.
Yeah, well, that's true. Probably. There was a microwave on a shelf. I remember to the right. We sat at the bar. It sat like maybe 6 or 8 people. I remember that there was a microwave. I remember seeing cans of like Dinty Moore stew and like Vienna sausages, like these little like things or whatever, and they were available and priced for food to eat. And I kept thinking, who's gonna eat this in a bar? Like, and some of it looked like it had been around since like the 80s. It was so like time capsule-ish. It was weird to me. And I kept thinking, I was like, is this the same place people were talking to me about? It's this huge dance club, and it gets packed on the weekends and whatever. So I said something to the bartender and they're like, oh yeah, but that's only open on like Friday or Saturday nights. And I'm like, but where is it? And they're like, oh, you have to go over there. And so we walked over and there were these windows, these big, huge windows. And sure as shit, we couldn't see very well because all the lights were off. But if you looked down here, we were on the second floor, which was kind of like what I would call where the manager's offices and stuff were. If you look down, there was this huge, cavernous, black and white Art Deco bar. Like dance floor, the whole bit. It was like a horseshoe or like a square box bar, like 360 design. Disco balls everywhere, but like we couldn't hardly see it because it was closed and they were late. So like we're trying, like poor Jimmy, I remember he had like a flashlight or something, was trying to shine it through the window. But it was so surreal to think about historically in this space, and I'm like, this is so wild. Like if anybody wants to go to the gay bar in the middle of the week, like you're gonna almost gonna go into a time capsule moment for this thing. But that experience taught me a lot about, a gay bar in a town where being gay may not necessarily be, everyone loves Will and Grace, kind of thing. Culturally, it makes sense why they're a little protective on stuff. I don't know if it's still there to this day or not. In Wheeling, that bar that we went to was an old speakeasy. When I had gone there, I tried to find it, and the address was 1 digit off of the adult bookstore. So the adult bookstore is on the front, like on Main Street or whatever it is. And I can't find the bar. And I'm like, where the hell's the damn bar? So I finally get annoyed enough that I go into the adult bookstore, which I've frequented them in my lifetime, so this isn't a big issue. But I go in and I was like, hey, I have a very strange question. And they're like, yeah, what's that? I said, I'm looking for this address, which is not this business. And I read it to them and they said, well, what are you looking for? And I named the bar and they said, oh, that's behind here. And I kind of looked at them funny and they said, yeah, you have to go outside and you have to go down to the intersection of the alleys. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you go down the alley and then like these buildings in this area intersect like into 2 alleys. So it's kind of like where streets come together as stop signs. And I said, all right. And they said, literally right behind us is where the bar is. They said the door is on the corner. If the light is on, like there's like a kind of a lack of reference, like a sconce light to the side of the door. If it's on, they're open. And when you open the outside door, there's another door as soon as you get in, and you won't be able to see anything. Like there will be mirrors. There's a mirror window on the right, and there's a mirrored window in front of you on the door. And you have to press the buzzer to get in. And I was like, oh, all right. Now, I didn't know at the time what I discovered. So I go back and, all right, lights on. I open the first door and you walk in and you kind of look around a little lost because it's literally just an entrance. Like there's nowhere to go. And so I press the buzzer and I kind of wait. And then I hear the electromagnetic lock. Right. And like then the second door unlocks and it opens. And as soon as I open it, I realize everybody in the bar can see me. Like looking towards the door because it's 2-way glass. And so I walk in and I'm like, I'll be goddamned. There's a bar back here. And it's a bar probably like right out of the 30s. And it had this big grand staircase that went up to the second floor, which is apparently where they had entertainment and stuff like that. I would have never in a million years known it was there. But it was teaching me so much about like culture and how we handled things. And at that time, I mean, this is only, 15 years ago or whatever. Yeah, like that. Yeah, there's a gay bar, and everybody kind of maybe knows about it, but like, It's not a big venue. You know what I mean? It's not this. It's not right on the main strip. There's not valets and parking. I mean, it was a very, very different kind of situation. And so now, with the change of times, and you mentioned a little bit, I think Edward a little bit earlier about politics and that. I'm very curious to know how that has changed the landscape. If we feel now a little bit more like we used to, that we need to police our own spaces, and kind of prioritize, I guess, like in terms of like accessibility.
Mm-hmm. I think that so another really cool thing. So the last summer I went to Amsterdam, and I gave this talk on this research as well to like a sex therapy hospital, which is really, really cool. But like one of the things that I kind of talked about that is, kind of like what Gary was talking about is like, do we really need to like reform ourselves, and is like the political climate like just a really good event for that to happen, and like what that would kind of look like. So I'm thinking about like in the 1960s. Yeah, in the 1960s in San Francisco, like one of the efforts to get like the community involved was to involve bars and the patrons in the political movement. So I think that, we could do well to like kind of go back to that, to see like, how our community can be reached through those avenues.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So this past summer, I had taken Evan to Cedar Point, which is where I grew up near Cedar Point. It was very ingrained parts of my childhood. And while we were there, I said, "Oh my gosh, I get to take you by my very first gay bar." And I was excited to share that with him. He was excited because he's always like wanting to know more about my past. And I tried looking up the address and I couldn't find it, so I assumed the bar had closed. And I just started driving up and down the streets in Sandusky, Ohio, looking for this bar. I did happen to find a gay bar, but I'm like, doesn't quite look the same as I remember it. But I'm pretty sure that was it. The bar I was looking for was called Club Eccentricities, and I had gone there when I was 18 years old, and that was in 1995. It's, as far as I know, the place that I found is that same bar, but it's now called Crowbar. And what's interesting is I was asking Drew if he had remembered ever going to Club Eccentricities and if he knew the address. And both of us found an address for the old bar, but noticed that Crowbar has a different address, and I have a feeling that somebody just messed up the addresses in the database somehow. But anyway, so that was my very first gay bar. What about you guys? What was your first gay bar? And what year was it when you went, and is it still in existence?
As far as I know, the gay 90s is still in existence in Minneapolis.
It was the last time I was in Minneapolis.
Which wasn't too long ago, right?
Within the past 6 months.
So I'm very curious about this. The bar was called the Gay 90s, and it's still in existence today. So we're talking almost 20 years later since, or roughly 20 years since Jeffrey first went. I don't know. Culturally, I'm kind of like, do we think of the 90s as gay? Like, would that be a confusing point to other people if they didn't know it was a gay bar? And I know that sounds strange because gay's in the title, but
it's quite. It's very obviously a gay bar.
But here's the thing. They don't classify themselves as a gay bar. They classify themselves as a nightclub. That's it. We are a nightclub. despite the rainbow flag hanging outside and the weekly drag shows.
In the men's room in the back?
In the men's room in the back. There's very
literally
adamant.
a bar that you get to by walking through the men's room.
I wonder why they don't do that.
Don't know. But they are adamant about saying that they are a nightclub, not a gay bar.
It could be a couple of things. It could be survival as a business. It could be, where does it sound? Like licensing and insurance. Because I know the bar in Erie, technically, I don't know what they are now. It was a supper club at one time, and then it was a nightclub, then it was a dance club, and then I think they changed it away from a dance club to a bar. And it has to do with legal things. It has to do with like what the state government deems is okay for your liquor license versus your food and blah, blah, blah. One of the recent changes that happened with ours was it had to do with smoking or non-smoking. And so by changing their classification, you could allow smoking. I know it sounds weird. Yeah. So I don't know quite how that all works out per se. But, interesting that they're making that distinction, but maybe I think it's more about survival. It's just business, Right. They don't want to ostracize their audience or limit it. For me, I did this research today because I knew we were going to probably talk about this. The first gay bar I ever went to was Lucille's in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I think it was in 1993 because I came out in 92. And I went there because my college roommate at the time went there on the frequent, and so he took me because I'd never been to a gay bar before. And to him, he was kind of like, "How could you have not been to a gay bar?" And I was like, "Oh no!" Like, the college town that we were in didn't have a gay bar, so we went, and I was like 19 or 20. And interestingly, it's still around today, but I got confused because apparently on July 4th of last year, the bar underwent new management and it is now renamed as Lucy's Place, not Lucille's. So it is technically open, and thanks to the new Facebook page that they created in the photography, I'm like, yep, that's the place, because the layout is identical. They just updated the decor. And switched a couple of things. But otherwise, it's still that small little bar, that has like a 12 or 16 seat, counter on the left, maybe some two tops on the right, and you walk back, and then all of a sudden there's the dance floor / stage, and maybe there's a DJ booth over in the back left. In the back right is where the restrooms were, and at the far back was the pool room, the billiard room, also known as where the lesbians all hung out at the time that I went. As the derogatory gay men at the bar talked about it, they were like, yeah, the fish smell comes from the back.
Oh
yeah. Well, I mean, it's the early 90s, and we weren't where we are today. So it was a very interesting time and place. But I was confused because one of the pictures made it look like this huge dance hall, like a white party or something. And I was like, well, that's not the place. Like Lucille's was nothing like that. So it took me forever to kind of like correspond and figure out like timeline wise, and then I figured out, as of July 2nd, July 3rd of last year, all their online stuff was referring to Lucille's, and then as of July 5th or 6th it says, formerly known as Lucille's or formerly Lucille's, and I was like, oh, new managers, they kept a similar name but they changed it. I looked through all the photographs. So this is the one thing that little perturbs me about businesses. For marketing purposes, sometimes they make it look like what it isn't. So there's been some photo stock used for like big dance venue type stuff, because I was like, where in the hell is this place in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, that there's like this warehouse kind of space that like is a gay bar? And then I was like, oh no, it's still the same thing. Like, it's not like 100 times grown in size. It's still same little place. So yeah, it's still around. I'm quite proud of them that they're still around, because when I went there back in the early 90s, I'm going to say Lucille's had been around since the 80s. So, in fact, I'm going to look real quick. I thought when it was Lucille's, they had an established date listed. But now I'm not sure if... I don't think Lucy's Place recognizes it the same way. But that being said, they've probably been around for quite some time, and I'm really happy for them that they are still in existence. Not only just for my nostalgia, but also for the fact that they are providing something for the community there.
Nice.
Edward, what about you?
So I kind of talked about this, but when I was giving that talk at school, I did my own personal research, and I found that the first time I ever went to a gay bar was on October 26th, 1998, at a bar called Connections with an X in Boonton, New Jersey. It was it was at an old train station. So you walked in, and then you walked up these stairs, and to your left was the dance floor, and then to your right was the bar with the pool table. It was a really big space. So that's where I went for quite a few years. They sold that place, and some other owners bought it, and they renamed it Switch, like the on switch. So that was that for a few years, and then it got bought out, and then it turned into the gay friendly model for a little while. But then they just switched it into a restaurant. So with it went a lot of personal, really, really strong memories for me, which was really sad. I sang karaoke in that bar more times than ever.
Than anyone ever combined.
Mm-hmm.
With the change of venue in that, do you feel that something gets lost when a business goes away or changes management or whatever?
I mean, it kind of has to, right? It loses its life, even when it changes names, there's a lot of research about branding and everything. So yeah, I think that once a company switches from a gay, just a gay specific model to a gay friendly model, I think that can create some possible tension among old frequent people who used to go there. But then at the same time, it could also create new spaces for more people to come who may not have felt welcome before. So, that's something to consider as well. But I think that something has to change, and I feel like there has to be some kind of a grieving process for that old space.
I think with the way that people are as stubborn as we are, that once something leaves a bad taste in your mouth, you are going to tend to stay away from it. So if I were of a younger generation and I go into a venue and I don't feel welcome there, or it's definitely not my type of a scene, I'm not going to go back. Even 5 years from now, when they say that they're remodeling and they're redoing all of this and they're going to, make sure that they're more inclusive, I probably won't be going back. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that would absolutely happen. I'm only taking a wild guess at what my reaction would be. But I feel a lot of people would have that same type of reaction, that once they've gone to an establishment, didn't care for it, they're not going to go back.
I'm thinking about what you said, Chester, about whether or not, that's a big thing right now. I don't know. I think that matters.
I don't have any frame of reference specifically to, I can't really back that up because it's never happened. There's never been a place. Well, there are places and things that happen to me in my life where, like restaurants or whatever. If I have a bad experience at a restaurant, I know I'm not going to go back there. Like, okay, take for instance, when we first moved to Columbus, there's a restaurant down the street. It's a well-known Australian-themed steakhouse. Evan has never been there. He suggested that he wanted to go there and said, I've always wanted to eat there. I always hear good things and people are always talking about it. And I'm like, sure, we can go there. I don't think it's all that great. We go in there, have our meal, and at the end of it, I was like, so what did you think of it? And he was like, well, it was all right. And I'm like, that's why I've never bothered to come back. I've never been wowed by this place. I think it's overrated and expensive. I would much rather go across the street to the Texan-themed steakhouse because I'm more familiar with it, and I think I get a better value. But for the other one, I have no reason to go back there. I would say the same thing would stand for any business. Any gay-oriented type of business, I think that still holds true. For as much as I want to support my community, if I don't feel my dollar bills are being used for good, then I'm not going to support it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point that I guess is what I've seen as a natural evolution of gay establishments. The lack of understanding that, hey, it's a business. And if you want to make a living, you're going to have to learn to do what businesses do to keep customers. Because maybe the landscape really did shift and change where we could go anywhere to get a drink. We don't need to come to your bar anymore because I can get a bar any place. It's perfectly acceptable to be myself. I don't have to come to your space because yours is the only space that I'm accepted at. So I wonder if that's, one of the things that's happened, because it's been one of my criticisms about a lot of establishments, especially gay bars, is that the owners don't seem to give a shit. Like they're not integrating themselves. They're not working to try to provide good customer service. As strange as that may sound. I'm kind of like, that there's like other places to go get drinks and food, right? Like, so yes, well, it's great that I'm here and I'm helping, support my local community. I'm only going to be willing to support it to a certain point. And maybe it's just my age and my maturity, that I'm kind of like, I don't need to be bothered with, supporting you if you're not really paying back. Maybe that's just my opinion on that.
Right. Well, okay. Do we have any other talking points? Edward, is there anything that you would like to address that we haven't talked about?
Well, I guess the only other thing that I kind of want to make known is that while, we kind of talked about like this discord between like say millennials or younger generations and older generations, I have seen like some awesome, incredible younger people who know way more than I do. Like step up and be representative and everything. So I think when we have these discussions, I think it's important to recognize that we're not talking about like all millennials, we're not talking about all like older people. So, engaging those younger individuals in talking to the people that they hang out with, that, like there's a world out here and we want you involved.
Right.
Real quick, before we go too far away from it, I put out another quick poll like I usually do, if I know about a subject way ahead of time. I got a few responses, and about half of the responses... I first want to say that for everybody that responded, their first gay bar happened on average of the age of 20, depending on the state and state laws about entering bars at whatever age. I'm just going to safely say age 20 is when they entered their first gay bar. For the people that answered, about half of them, the bars are now closed. and for the other half, they are either still open and still using the name that they've always had, or the name that when that person went to that establishment, or they're still open and it is now considered something else, but it is still running as a gay bar establishment.
Just name change.
Yeah, just a name change.
Interesting. Well, and I know that in the live chat, Drew had said that for him it was 1986, the Curiosity Pub in Columbus, Georgia. It was about 25 to 30 miles outside of town, away from the military base, because he's a veteran. And he said that it did close quite a while back, which kind of falls in line with what you're saying, Chester. Like, it seems about, like, from what we know of those that replied, that about half no longer have the establishment doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But others, like, I find interesting, like one of them in the quick poll that was listed, Full Moon Saloon. I know I've heard that name many times.
Oh, so have I. The gentleman who wrote that, they said, "Oh, my first bar was Full Moon Saloon, but I don't think it's open anymore." And I'm like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, Full Moon Saloon, Orlando, Florida. Well, that's the one near Parliament House. I've been to a bear event at that specific bar. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm tracing back in my head. This is when I was at that bear event. Hasn't been there since. And then I'm like, there was another time that I stopped by Parliament House like 2 or 3 years ago for something. And I remember seeing it, but wasn't sure if it was open. So I did some research and it's still there. It's now called the Woodstock. But what's interesting is they have an area of the bar called the Full Moon Lounge. So while the entire establishment has changed their name, they dedicated one portion of their bar to keep the Full Moon name, which I thought was kind of neat.
Nice.
Interesting. So, any other bar establishment kind of memories we want to talk about, or are we ready to move on?
I'm good.
All right. Time to go. I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Because I was going to say, time to go into the back room, take a look at some dick. So I titled this, Who Said Three's a Crowd? It's 3 guys from DRT Talk. So Tishy Tuesday rolled into Hump Day with the Bacon Boys. It's 3 cutie cubs in a bed. Rub-a-dub-dub.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a king. Like a king-size bed. I don't think it's a...
And?
Well, no, because there's always this whole practical, like, how many men can you fit in a bed? And it's like, well, depends on how big they are and how big the bed is.
Well, also, if it's summertime and the air conditioning's out or something, 3 men in a bed would probably be... 3 bears in a bed would probably be a bit of a crowd because it's too hot. In the dead middle of winter?
Nice. They're cutie patooties.
Mm-hmm. For some odd reason, I cannot link my Tumblr pic into the live chat.
Oh.
It's just not letting me. It keeps telling me there's an error. So
yeah, same for me. Weird.
Maybe it is just too raunchy.
People will just have to go to cubsoutloud.com when the podcast episode is up and click on it and see for themselves.
So I did title Oriental Rug. It's of a bearish gentleman, he's sitting on his ass, but he's leaning back.
I can see it, Chester.
Oh, Weird.
Not the ass.
Oh, the link in the live chat.
No, it's in the Google Doc.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah, it's working there.
right.
It's
What
just not
Chester was saying
Google
is
Doc.
he's just trying to copy paste it over into the YouTube live chat, and it won't.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
copy, but it won't paste. Like
There.
YouTube
Keeps
for some
coming up
reason
with an
restricting
error.
it. Yeah.
But it's a very handsome gentleman laying on this oriental rug, and it's taking from an overhead shot. And I really like the picture, and for whatever reason, it reminds me of hotel conference room rugs because they're kind of gaudy.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, Chester, because sometimes I go into a property and I'm like, somebody picked this carpet. And worse yet, other people approved this carpet. And beyond that, somebody made this carpet. And I don't mean physically made it. I mean, somebody designed it.
Right.
And it was approved as an acceptable design. And then somebody picked it. And then somebody, like, said it was going to be okay. So I see that stuff sometimes in hallways, or I agree with you, like in rooms or stuff. And I go, I don't think of that when I see this particular thing. Like, it immediately transports me, like, halfway across the world, so to speak. It makes me think of Aladdin and a magic carpet, maybe. But
I would
yeah,
like to magic his carpet.
Hell yeah.
That's not where I thought that was going to go. I thought one of y'all was going to say something about, like, you would gladly take a ride on his magic carpet. But anyways.
Pick me.
I'd gladly
Hey.
take a ride on its face or his dick.
We'll ride him to the floor.
Oh, good Lord.
I'd give him carpet burns. Okay, we're done. Moving on.
Moving on. I titled mine, "Yeah, Boy, You Keep Going." The full caption is, "Yeah, boy, you keep going and we'll make those speeding tickets disappear. We have fun." This is 10'2" on Tumblr, who I have a huge crush on. He and his boyfriend currently had a little role-playing session in which one of them was a police officer and the other one apparently was a person who got speeding tickets and trying to figure out how to get out of the speeding tickets. So, notably, the police officer is wearing a cap and an armband, and I think a vest with a
Maybe a tie.
Yeah, but no shirt. And the offending speedster is clamped down on one nipple, apparently. So, yeah, I thought this
Gotta
was.
do what he's guys got to do.
I know. I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. I think it's hot. What I like about it is, like, that they're showing, like, hey, we're a couple and we're young, like, in a relationship, but we have fun. Like, so we're adding a little bit of a role play element to it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So it's not that, he has to have a complete police officer ensemble, that's registration certified, blah, blah, blah. This isn't cosplaying for, seriousness. This is, it's sex.
For fun.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, so there's that.
Edward, how about you?
Well, for me, I have been kind of exploring Tumblr recently, and I came across this guy, Bear About Town, and it looks like he recently joined Tumblr again after a hiatus of sorts, and I just think he is adorable and handsome, and so the picture that I posted is him just looking very, very handsome with his arm on top of his head and just serving me like,
get down here, boy, realness.
Yes, and I just love it. And if you go to his page, this there's no genitalia in this page, but all of his other pictures are really, really nice. Full body, just great, and makes me want to be a very good boy for him.
So, would you say that this is your go-to aesthetic for guys you like?
One of, but like maybe like top 2 aesthetics.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go and get some bleach and get this beard going.
Get on it, Chester.
Unlike me, he isn't really going gray in the beard.
Woof.
All right, moving on into our links. Something less porny. A new site called Verve by Crunchyroll, where Crunchyroll basically took all these different services, including Crunchyroll itself, kind of put it into a site which has a free version with ads and a premium paid version without ads, plus some extra content, such as Dan Harmon's Harmon Quest that he used to have over on CISO. It is now a exclusive over on Verve, and you can watch anime, and I think they got a thing called Shudder, which is like a horror channel, which is that online channel that you can see see horror stuff and etc. But it's a pretty neat site, and I can watch some of the stuff that I want to watch on Crunchyroll on my TV because I can Chromecast it.
Who is typing so furiously?
Edward.
You're like
I'm
over
just
there typing a novel.
a powerful writer, especially considering it's a Mac chiclet keyboard.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm very aggressive in my writing styles.
That's fine.
No, it wasn't that.
This is hysterical.
The reason why we're laughing is because we found Edward's his Tumblr pic. Gary found the gentleman's Tumblr, and now we're all scrolling through his pictures, and we're in our side chat having conversations about him.
Yes, but notably, I picked up on it, and I was like, "Oh, that's got to be Edward," because I don't think it's Chester, and I don't think it's Jeffrey, and all I hear is clickety, 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 clickety.
Yeah.
Clickety.
I was hearing this at the beginning. I'm like, "Do you have a mechanical keyboard?" And it's like, "No, it's a Mac." And I'm like, "Wow, that's aggressive typing."
When deadlines approach, you gotta write as fast as you can.
And sometimes the chiclets don't go down fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So, anyways, so Verb, new freemium channel. There you go.
Cool. My pick this week is Adam Savage, formerly of MythBusters. He does a tour of the Jim Henson exhibition. It's at a museum, and I forget the name of the museum offhand. I think it's a museum for visual arts or something of that sort. So what's interesting is the Jim Henson exhibition is a permanent installation that is not very big, but does have some things that are on loan. The video is pretty cool. I think it's about 15 minutes long. It's not very long, but he gets a tour and talks to the woman, I think, who's the person who's in charge of the exhibit and stuff. And they talk a little bit about the history, about where some of the pieces came from and that kind of stuff. If you're a Muppets fan and you like this type of thing, about like how things are made, how they get created and worked, it's pretty awesome. I am actually pretty stoked about the fact that they put this out there. For those of you that are interested, it's because it's focusing on Jim Henson, it's not just Muppets. So there are some references to the Muppets. There's this awesome thing they do about the stuff from the Muppet Show. But then there's also some other items that are in there, including some costume pieces from Labyrinth and some other works that he's done. So,
but apparently not Farscape. Or at least nothing was shown in the video.
Yeah, I don't think they actually make a reference to that, which it is interesting because there's one of the topic points they talk about is because they're focusing on Henson, it's how do you kind of talk about that but then not end with a downer because he died, and the Henson company still continues on. It does some other things, but it's pretty cool. And there's some guts of animatronics, some pieces about how they make some of the Muppets work, and other things. So I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. So feel free to check it out.
Well, and also keep in mind, at least for the Henson company and everything, Jim Henson was just kind of the founder. He had the basics of what he wanted for the Muppets and everything, but everything that was done to advance everything that the Henson Company does didn't just evolve from Jim Henson himself.
Right.
It also was his team, Frank Oz, etc. So,
this movie, or not this movie, this video actually prompted me. Last night I watched a movie that my dad had given me on DVD. Back in 2005, the Henson Company helped produce a movie called Mirror Mask that I'd never heard of before. And it's very interesting, but it's also very much for the American palate. It's like a foreign film. It's English, but it's very visually like a foreign film. I found it very interesting, but it has some parallels, kind of like Labyrinth, about a young person who goes on a journey through the course of the film. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. So, anyways,
so I didn't. Sorry to backtrack. I didn't initially have a link, but Edward said something earlier in the show that made me realize that I have one. He mentioned that he was given a book called The Unofficial Gay Manual, Living the Lifestyle, or at least appearing to, as a birthday present, wasn't it?
No, it was just a coming out present.
Oh, coming out present. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I just quickly did a search for it and found it on Amazon. I paid $4 for a used paperback book, and I ordered it. So I'm going to provide a link for others to be able to buy that book. I'm reading the little blurb from the back cover, and I just thought it was funny that it says, just at this historical turning point comes the Unofficial Gay Manual, a wild and witty guide to the tribal customs of the red-blooded American gay male. With essays, multiple choice, and true-false tests, lists, sidebars, and charts, the manual explains it all for you with items that are as informative and enlightening as they are laugh-out-loud funny. So
basically,
yeah,
they weren't necessarily taking themselves seriously anyways.
Right.
They're saying, hey, here's something that's kind of, might help out, but hey, it's just a book.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Neat. There's also, I used to have a book, and I think you can still kind of get it on Amazon. It's the Bear Handbook, which was kind of along that line.
I had one of those.
I love that thing. And to this day, whenever somebody asks, what's a bear? I always say, well, the general idea, is husky, hairy, and homosexual, which is basically part of the title of that book. And I'm like,
and those who love them.
Yeah. So neat.
Cute. Edward, as our guest, I believe you have a link.
I do. So, does anybody here know who Brandi Carlile is?
I know who Belinda Carlisle is.
Thank you, Chester, because that's exactly where I went, and then I was like, nope, not the same thing.
No, not the same thing. So Brandi Carlile is a kind of like a folk singer, like really popular. She's been nominated for for a Grammy. Really big on like the NPR music scene. She's lesbian. And she has an album that's coming out soon called By the Way, I Apologize or I Forgive You. So the lead single on that album is called The Joke. And it really spoke to me because the first verse is all about like men that don't fit into like the heteronormative box. So like just to give you a couple of lyrics, you're feeling nervous, aren't you, boy, with your quiet voice and impeccable style. Don't ever let them steal your joy and your gentle ways to keep them from running wild. So like, that really speaks to me in a a deep level because, I haven't always been pegged as like the most masculine of males. So to have a song that like, tips the hat to this is really big. And on the other side of the song, it talks about like strong, independent women. And so I think it's a really good song. It's very powerful. Brandy's got a killer voice. So I would definitely recommend that as a good listen.
Nice.
Cool. Good deal.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what, folks? That's the end.
Oh, sad.
Plenty of ways to contact us. Pop over to our website, cubsoutloud.com. Shoot us an email at cubsoutloud@gmail.com. Leave us a voicemail, sexy or otherwise, at 361-COL-TALK. That's 361-265-8255. Follow us on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, and Instagram, although I'm not sure what much is actually going on over there. At Cubs Out Loud in the appropriate place of the URL. Please join us on the Bear Underground, where you can join the COL Entourage interest feed. You can rate us on iTunes, subscribe to us on Google Play Podcasts, listen to us on Stitcher Radio. Find me anywhere on the internet as Boxstep, Box Puppy, Box Cub, Box something or other.
If you want to get a hold of me, you can find me as Gabear73 online. Chester?
You can find me on Tumblr or Twitter under the name The Pup Up There, getting stuffed with turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce and pie and all those good things this week. Or various bear dating sites across the net under the name Pup Shutter or Cupcake76.
And Edward, what about you? If people want to get out in touch with you, how would they do that?
So you can get a hold of me a few ways. So you can email me, ehcooke, COOKE, at widener.edu. You can find me on Facebook, Edward Angelini-Cooke. I have 2 different handles. So I have Eddie H. Cook on Instagram and Twitter, and that's EDDIE. And then on gay applications, you can find me as Lil Cubby, LILCUBBIE, primarily on Growler and Bear411. I know, archaic, but I still love it.
Whatever it's about.
You should listen to our recent episode.
Oh, yeah?
Old school bear dating sites.
We discussed
Old
sites like Bear411.
With that, say good night, everybody!
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good one, y'all.
So I'm going through Amazon looking for books, and Drew just sent me one saying The Bear Book, Readings in the History and Evolution of Gay Male Subculture. And I'm like, ooh, I'd buy that one because I just purchased like 4 of them. This one was $53. And I'm like, no, I'm not buying that one.
Wait, is that one of the Les Wright books?
Yes.
Yep.
I might own it.
Okay.
He had the Bear Book and the Bear Book 2, and I think there were some few others.
Yeah.
I did have the Bear Handbook. I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, I think I lent mine to somebody, and I kept forgetting to get it back from them, or something happened that they never got it back to me. I love that book, too.
It's a fun book. It's a good humor, kind of comical lens kind of look at our community, especially back at the time that it came out. Oh, that's interesting. We already got a like on our YouTube from today. Yay!
Nice.
Coolly. So, Edward, how do you feel now that we've popped your live podcast cherry?
Yeah.
Really, really great. This was a really great experience, and a lot of fun.
Was it as good for you?
Was for us.
I think it was. I have to go clean up the mess that I made.
Well,
You're obviously a silent O kind of person because we didn't catch that happened.
Well, yeah, you know.
I'm gonna
I put myself on mute.
stop streaming now.